Hi, we're going to talk a little bit about Crêtes Sabla today, a particular favorite of wine of mine from the portfolio. This was one of the first wineries we went to get when we opened Buyers and Cellars, and the Aosta Valley has always been a passion of mine. It was kind of a bucket list trip for me to go there. 95% of the wine produced within the Aosta Valley is consumed within the Aosta Valley. It's the smallest wine region in Italy, and it's also the highest elevation vineyards in all of Europe. Les Crêtes sits within the confines of the highest peaks in the Alps, so Monte Rosa, the Matterhorn, as well as Mont Blanc. In fact, it sits on the slopes of Mont Blanc. The Aosta Valley rises from about 1,500 feet down in the town of Donas, where Nebbiolo, known as Pico Tendro, locally is grown, up to the dizzying heights of about 5,000 feet in Morges de Blanc et Les Salles, where they grow Pré Blanc, which is also where the vineyards for Les Crêtes Mont Blanc are. But today we're talking about their Le Sable, which is a beautiful mouth-filling, rich wine created from some of their indigenous varietals, including the ubiquitous Petit Rouge. So in the region that Les Crêtes sits, called Tourette, Petit Rouge is native to that area, and it's must be a constituent for their finest wines, which are Tourette. But this is the base for their house wine, which is Le Sable. And then there's a little bit of Primetta, some Meolet, Gamaret, a little bit of Barbera sometimes some Fumin, as well as a sprinkling here of their Pinot Nero. The interesting thing about this wine is that it's non-vintage. Despite the fact that each year new wine is produced, the vintage guidelines for the DOC of Aosta Valley are quite stringent, and they have real rigid controls on planting densities as well as harvest dates. And Les Crêtes would like to just create a simple, elegant, easy drinking wine that they can sell with a little bit of volume. And they didn't want to follow these laws. So allowing it or putting it as non-vintage allows them to kind of stretch those rules a little bit. Despite that, each year is a little bit different. But the current year is quite a robust wine. The evenings are quite cool, but the daytime temperatures can reach dizzying heights of 40 degrees Celsius. There's absolutely zero cloud cover. They're above the cloud line for much of the year, and they receive little to no rainfall during the growing season. So there's irrigation necessary from the Doria Balta. They receive about 20 inches of precipitation all year in the vineyards, and this would be mainly in terms of snow during the wintertime. So this is dry farming, kind of extreme dry farming. And what this means is you got really stressed vines, and then the nighttime drop, the diurnal shift in temperature, allows for acids to stay in the wine. So despite this being their house wine, it's still quite complex. Big, rich texture with fine acidity. The really key part to selling a wine like this is that you have to explain that this is not going to have a flavor profile that people are typically used to. These indigenous varietals do not taste like other wines. So this has a little bit of funk. It has a little bit of weirdness, for lack of a better term, to it. But the richness on the palate kind of overcomes that. And the nervy acidity keeps it refreshing and keeps you going back for another glass. It pairs excellently with food. The food of the region is meat and cheese based. Not a lot of vegetables grow up there. And what does tends to be in the root vegetable area. So one of their special dishes is beets and potatoes in a bowl, and then they kind of ladle melting cheese into it. Really great for the heart. That's why they need all this red wine to wash it down with. Aosta Valley, in and of itself, is quite fascinating. The history goes back thousands of years, and it was reputed to be the area where Hannibal came over the Alps during his invasion of Rome. It's been fiercely independent for as long as it's been around. It was part of the House of Savoy for about 700 years and was still part of France until it joined the Kingdom of Sardinia, which eventually was the precursor to what Italy became. They've attempted to italicize the region, but it has been at times violently rebuffed. And after World War II, it was kind of codified that it's an autonomous state. So only nominally part of Italy. And the rich culture of the region makes it a quite different experience when you travel up from Torino, which isn't that far away. It's just a couple of hours away down south. It's like entering a whole new land. Very similar to Alto Adige in that respect, and except instead of German, it's the French influence. Right on the other side of the mountains, you have Chamonix, which is right near Sabla. So they share a lot of varietals to character uh, between each other. And then on the other side is the Valais in Switzerland. So things like Petit Arvin, Cornelin are grown in all three of those regions. And there's a lot of similarities with the wines that come out of these regions. The other interesting thing is that phylloxera has not been an issue in the Aosta Valley. This is simply because it's at extremely high elevations, and the ground is very sandy in phylloxera. It doesn't like sandy soil, so they have a lot of autochthonous plantings in this area. They only have one technically autochthonous varietal, and that's the Prié Blanc that only grows there. The others are more indigenous, but some of these vines go back hundreds of years. There's a very rich French influence to the winemaking. So French oak is kind of the norm in the region. And they do a lot of work with old oak barrels. So they don't really like to pound the oak to the wines. This particular wine doesn't see any oak. But even the wines that do see oak rarely get new oak. And that's kind of saved for Chardonnay, which is considered to be a very noble variety in that region. One of the other things of note for Les Crêtes is that it's been growing. It's been run contiguously in that region for 200 years. So it's one of the oldest wineries in the Aosta Valley. This is considered the best winery from the region, but all the wineries that we had the experience to try were fantastic. I hope you enjoy this wine. I hope this kind of helps a little bit for selling. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Cheers.